Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 86th edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast. And this is me, Mac B, the Wolf, your host, leading you on his adventures through the UK and London as an American expat who misses his record collection more than his friends and family. Of course, one of his dear friends, Action Jackson, is his co-host and partner in crime on this show, and we'll be welcoming Action here on the show here very shortly. Hope everybody out there in London has been taking care of this week as it has been hot. Now look, I grew up in the Midwest and in the Southeast, so when it goes over 100, which happens several times during every summer of my life to this point, it's just something you have to be aware of. All right, maybe you take it a little easy that day, make sure you spend more time in the AC. But they're not used to that stuff here in England and London. And we had record-breaking temperatures all across the island over the last couple of days. And I just hope everyone out there is being safe and secure. So glad it wasn't so nasty hot during the BST Hyde Park shows. Those two Rolling Stones shows I went to were absolutely beautiful. Maybe didn't hit 70 degrees. Which I don't know what that is in Celsius. It's the one thing you people should change. I mean, we should maybe all go to millimeters and kilograms and all that, but we're not scientists. You don't need Celsius. It's not 100 when it boils and 0 when it freezes. It's contrived. Just use Fahrenheit. All you really need to know is whether you need a jacket or not, right? Anyway, it was nice and cool during those shows. For the third show that I went to, the last show of the summer, the Duran Duran show, it was warmer. It got up in the 80s and the sun was on us, but it's nothing like it's been this week. So I just hope everyone out there is staying cool and taking care of each other. But this show is about that Duran Duran show, a band who I'd always wanted to see ever since I was 8 or 9 years old. Didn't even really know that going to concerts was a thing back then. But I knew that on MTV, they had the coolest videos like Rio and Hungry Like the Wolf. Even Is There Something I Should Know, which may have been the first one I saw. Brilliant use of the medium. They had great, like Muscle Mulcahy or Mulcahy, however you want to pronounce it, doing a lot of their videos. They used a lot of color. They had the sound of a generation. They looked good. Duran Duran were everywhere on MTV, and MTV really got a big boost from having Duran Duran bring them the content of those videos. And of course, what they did with Seven and the Ragged Tiger and Wild Boys, the multi-million-dollar video that was off the Live Arena album. They were huge. You cannot understate the influence of Duran Duran on pop culture, on MTV, and on people of my generation back in the early to the mid-'80s. So we're going to talk about that here today, and the fact that I got to take my daughter, the Wolf Cub, let her share this experience. She loves going to concerts. She loves to dance around, and she likes the music of Duran Duran, so I'm really happy that I got to take her. Now, first, we need to talk a little bit of business. We are sponsored by rarevinyl.com, and if you're looking for hard-to-find records, or you're a collector and you only want things in the highest quality condition, you've got to check out rarevinyl.com. They also have another site, eil.com. They've been doing it for over 3 decades. They have over 250,000, that's right, 250,000 plus pieces of vinyl and posters and LPs and CDs and singles and tour programs and all sorts of little pieces of rock and roll memorabilia. It's not all rock and roll. You like jazz, you like blues, you like classical, you can find almost anything there. They have a great team and an amazing staff that goes out and finds the highest quality stuff and then makes sure it gets in your hands in the pristine shape in which you desire it. Not to mention, if you use the code PODCAST, just PODCAST, when you check out, you're going to get 10% off of your order, which is a great deal, and they do ship all around the world. And yes, our biggest markets are the UK and the US, but we've been heard in over 100 markets around the world. So if you've got that rare or hard to find thing, or you're a collector of certain Duran Duran properties, hey, go check out rarevinyl.com, use the code PODCAST. We're also proud to be part of the Pantheon Podcast family of shows, which has about 100 different shows on everything music related. I don't care if you like classic rock like us, or you like hip hop, you like jazz, pop music. It doesn't really matter. There's going to be some shows in there for you. Some amazing artists and hosts. And we've got a few friends that we've done crossovers with on our show, like Paul from Vintage Rock Pod and This Day Rocks, like Jay from The Hook Rocks, like Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out Loud Cast, the #1 Kiss podcast in the world, and we're so glad that they are back doing what they do well. So glad to hear you guys again. And Christy Alexander Hallberg, who will be coming soon. She was on our show talking about her book, Searching for Jimmy Page, and she's got her own show launching here very soon. You're going to want to check that out, called Rock is Lit. And if you want to follow us or reach out to us, you can do so at ugly_werewolf or Twitter. We're also working on YouTube. We're working on Instagram. I think we've got something going on Facebook. But Twitter's the best way to get us. And our email address, uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com, is a great way to let us know how you're doing, what you think about the show. But back to Duran Duran. It's my third straight week going to Hyde Park. This time it was warmer. This time it was just me and my 8-year-old daughter, so it's a little different dynamic than when I was alone or when I was with both the wife and the daughter. But it was a festive time. It was a little warmer. It was fun. She's a little trooper. She couldn't wait to go to her next rock and roll show. I'm the one who has to tell her, no, we have to leave earlier. No, you can't go to every single show. I'm not taking you to Iron Maiden and stuff like that. But she wants to see everything, and I'm just trying to be super dad, take her to as many things as I can. Get that rock and roll into her soul so that when she gets to be 12, 13, 14, and everybody's listening to the latest Britney Spears or Meghan Trainor or whatever the kid, Harry Styles, whatever the crap solo pop artist of the day is, she's going to have the good stuff in her. And I think that's my job as a dad, to indoctrinate the rock and roll and the good music into her so she won't get hung up with the junk that's going to come her way. So let's jump in. Let's go ahead and get into it. Third weekend in a row. So happy to see my childhood heroes, Duran Duran, live at Hyde Park. We're talking about them here on The Wolf.
Can we start with the airing of the grievances?
Yeah, that sounds like a good thing to start with.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the stadium tour,
right?
Both here and in the Twitter universe.
Mm-hmm.
There was a story that came out this week about somebody had spotted Vince Neil's teleprompter. Instead of one of the risers, there's a teleprompter, and it went back and forth a lot on the Twitter universe. People having their opinions about it. Oh, it's crap. He's cheating and whatever. I mean, how do you feel about that?
How do I feel about that? Look, they have a big job to do. They're not playing an arena. They're playing a stadium, and they're sharing the bill with some pretty big pros, in Def Leppard, who are amazing and awesome. But even the folks below them, like Joni and the guys in Poison, whatever you want to think about Poison, they are professionals. They go out and they deliver a show. And Bret Michaels doesn't need a teleprompter. And so if you want him to deliver the best show, then that's probably one of the necessary pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Now, do I think it's pretty weak? Because it's not like there's anything new on there, right? I mean, if he learned the lyrics 30 years ago, he should probably still know them. But I mean, the joke was, Nicky has to write out the lyrics for him because, Vince doesn't write songs. But he also needs somebody to read them to him, right? So, because I don't know that he reads that much. So I'm like, I don't even know what the teleprompters are really there for, but that's just me.
Well, my thought is, so if you go and see an orchestral performance, even at the Royal Albert Hall, all of the musicians have the music on the stands ready to go. I don't think that's such a big deal. I mean, if the choices are either he has that or there's a pretty good chance he's going to forget one of these lyrics, let him have it up there. That's fine. To me, I'd rather see that than somebody singing in the background or them using. I'd rather see that than a pre-recorded track. So if he needs that, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's right. And you want him to get it right. And if he really is struggling with which bit comes next, I mean, on show, whatever it was, 70-something, we were talking about Sting. Sting's a pretty smart guy. And he messed up Message in a Bottle. He did the third verse instead of the second or whatever it was.
Right.
So it can happen to anybody. We've seen it happen before. I mean, the only people who I know have ever really done it on a regular basis. So I guess Vince now. Ozzy does it.
Yeah.
Because Ozzy's out of his mind. Poor Ozzy. And again, I don't know how well Ozzy can read, so I just hope the teleprompter actually helps him. But, Ozzy needs all the help he can get, so it's like, if Ozzy needs it, just give it to him. I saw him 20 years ago and thought, wow, he's past his prime. So if people are still seeing Ozzy, you better hope he has a teleprompter. The other that was very controversial at the time was Guns N' Roses. Axl used it during the Use Your Illusion tour.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing they did with Metallica. And I think a big reason for that was it was, they had these 2.5 hours worth of new music on those two albums that they just wrote. Like they just wrote it. And, like Don't Cry. Well, which version are you doing, right? Like that could screw you up. You'd be in verse 1 of Don't Cry version 1, and then you go into verse 2 of Don't Cry version 2. So it might be helpful to have some of that stuff up there. But I remember he took a lot of shit for it back in 92 or whatever that was.
I do remember that because I was thinking about that too. Who were the other people? I know Ozzy was the big one that he's had that for a while. But
he needs it.
That is correct. But for Axl, I mean, what would you rather have? Do you want to have the teleprompter or do you want to have him forget a verse, kick the microphone across the stage and then leave? Let's just put up the words so we can get through this. The other thing I was thinking too is that, I mean, there could be stuff going on the stage. If you get distracted for a minute, I mean, it's a big production. Maybe we haven't done this for a while. So want to make sure that whatever makes you feel comfortable, go ahead and do it. Let's just get through it and not have a big, like you said, you forget where you are in the song or you start singing the wrong song or something like that. Yeah.
It's not like he's in sick shape like a Bruce Dickinson or something like that. I think he's in better shape. I think he has lost some weight, Vince.
Yes.
But I mean, if he's trying to be a front man and run around a little bit, you get tired. You just get a little worn out. You may even get out of breath. So you need to know what's coming up so you can get ready for it. And he doesn't have to think about it. If Vince starts to think, they're in trouble,
Correct.
So they need him to just kind of do what he does. And so if it's there for him, yeah, that's fine, And I noticed that our buddy Matt B on the Twitter, he went to the Detroit show and he was talking about how awesome the crew were. I think he has a bias towards the crew. I think he's just a big fan.
And see, I'd like to get him on to just because of that, because I went to go see Def Leppard, was happy to see Motley Crue, but was there for Def Leppard. And it sounds like, he was the other way around.
And maybe Motley closed too. I'm not sure, but obviously that makes a difference. I think if they're the real headliner that closes the show,
Yeah, because when I went to see them, there was no fanfare when they were setting up the stage. Like you didn't know who it was. But then when they were over and you knew Def Leppard was last, they had all the stuff on there. They had the big, Diamond Star Halo pictures up and they had a big countdown. And so you knew what was happening. So yeah, that might've been completely the other way around if Motley was going to close the show.
Well, and it's just good that Tommy's back doing it. I mean, obviously a big deal was made that he only came out and played a few songs, or like there was no announcement before the tour started. He just came out the first night. He's like, "Hey man, I got broken ribs, dude." And the doctor dude told me not to play, but I'm going to play anyway, and then he did what he could and then he was off, but now I think that he's in for the whole show. So obviously they were hoping whatever Tommy did, fell off his motorcycle, banging 4 chicks at the same time, whatever he was doing to break those ribs, they were hoping, well, he'll be fine by the time the tour starts. So there's no reason to put anything out there. And then he's like, all right, it's going to be a couple weeks before I'm really together. So they just kind of kept it quiet.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure he went into that first show thinking he was going to play the whole thing and then got 5 songs into it and was like, no. Yeah. Ooh.
So tell me, because Def Leppard have a lot of female fans, as do Poison, and obviously Joni does as well. What was the kind of breakdown of the crowd? Was it 50-50? Was it mostly guys, but well represented from the female portion? Was it more women? What would you say your ratio?
I would say it was 50-50, and it was interesting too. Now that I'm thinking about this, because there were I saw groups of both men and women. I saw groups. Actually, there I didn't really see too many groups of just guys, but I did see groups of just women. So yeah, there were a lot. The female fans were definitely well represented, but you figure you had Def Leppard always had a big
female following.
Following. So does Poison.
Absolutely.
I would say they would probably more female than male.
Yep.
And then there were a lot of they had a lot of tough rocker chicks for Joan Jett too.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't know how that was going to go, especially since she was coming on early and it was still pretty wet. There were a lot of people standing in the rain just yelling, jumping up and down for the Joan Jett song. So that was really cool. Yeah. I would say probably at least 50-50, and a lot of women who were there because it looked like they were fans, not just like, well, okay, the old man wants to go, so let's go. No, and a lot more people with Poison shirts on too than I thought. I was like, oh, okay, interesting.
No, they're very popular, especially
Yeah.
in that part of the world. So, because I asked that because I went to those two Stone shows in Hyde Park,
Uh-huh.
and it's pretty close to 50-50. I might say it skews maybe a little bit more male, like 53-47 or something like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's 50-50. At the Duran Duran show, I'd say it was more like 55% female. And there were a lot more like 4 girlfriends. We're all going to go out. We're all going to go dance to our favorite 80s tunes, all psyched up about it. Because there was a lot of couples there at the Stone show. And not that there weren't Duran Duran, but there were a lot of like groups of women like, this is girls' night out. It's Duran Duran time, so.
That could get out of control in a hurry.
Well, if they were young, I mean, these are... because my wife didn't go with me. So to set the stage, we bought these a year and a half ago or whenever it was. Duran Duran was supposed to play Hyde Park in 2021. It all got postponed for COVID. So we come back to this year and now it's time. And it just so happened the night of the concert that morning, my wife and the Wolf Cub were coming back from America. Like they got to the house at 9 a.m. after a transatlantic flight all night. So I'm like, I just looked at my wife. I'm like, you're not coming tonight, are you? She's like, no, no, I can't make it. And I offered my daughter the out, but she's at that age, she doesn't want to miss anything. She doesn't even have to know any of the songs. She's like, yeah, I want to go, Daddy. Let's go with Duran Duran. So we ended up going just the two of us.
Oh, nice.
And I was telling my wife afterwards, like, yeah, there were more women at the show last night than there were at the Stone show. She goes, oh, there's a lot of hot chicks there. I'm like, well, I wouldn't say that. I'd say there are a lot of women at the show. Like a lot of models hopping around. In fact, I saw some really just gorgeous women at the Stone show, whereas I saw a bunch of like moms who were just like, finally, Mommy's got a night away, and she's going to go have some fun at the Duran Duran show. But it was hot. I mean, the thing is, at those first two Stone shows, it didn't break 70 that day. And it was over 80, which is a little hot for London. And the sun was on us, and the sun doesn't set till after 9 or thereabouts, so it was a little hot, like walking in there and getting in there. We had to kind of take a break before the music started. And I just, and this time I said, we got to find shade, priorities on shade.
Yeah.
And another thing that was very different was at the Stone shows, the merch lines were like 45 minutes to an hour. Like you want to get a Stone shirt, you got to sit in line for a long time. You wanted a Duran Duran shirt, you walk right up. There's nobody in line. I mean, maybe you had to sit behind one person at the most, but for the most part, you could walk right up there and buy whatever you want. Now, because it was so much hotter, the drink lines and the water lines were super long, whereas, first Stone songs, we walk right up there, 3 bottles of water, please, and that was easy. So that was kind of
$90.
Yeah, that was a little interesting. It was a little different from the first two shows, but I decided, okay, it's just me and the little one. We're not even going to try to push anywhere up near this time. She was close, relatively close for the Stone show. Let's just hang back here. Let's be in the shade. They have these big screens. The sound is great. They have the sound hooked up very well. So if you're over 100 yards away, get like 140 yards away, and the sound hits you perfectly. And eventually we found just a good spot to hang out in. She could dance a little bit. I could sit there and bop my head. We could watch the screen to see them well. And it was a really neat, it was a cool show. It was very mellow. It wasn't huge rock and roll, even though it was a lot more upbeat than a lot of the Stones stuff. And maybe the crowd was skewed a little bit younger, maybe a decade younger or something like that. Still, it was a very chill evening for us.
Interesting, because they do have some pretty upbeat songs. Now, I know you've played a lot of rock music for your daughter. I mean, was Duran Duran in there? Like, did she know any of these songs?
Yeah, because one of my favorite stations on the Echo that I play is like 80s New Wave.
Okay.
You tell her, say, play 80s New Wave or whatever, and you'll hear Duran Duran in there and a lot of the stuff that we grew up on in the kind of the early MTV era. But sometimes I'll just play Duran Duran because I know everybody likes it. I mean, my wife likes it. The kid can hop around to it. I still, like all those old songs. What's interesting about Duran Duran is just the fact that their catalog is so much bigger than I really know it to be, right? I mean, we talked about this. We did a Duran Duran show at number 23. and we talk about basically Duran Duran is the 80s for us, and that greatest hits decade. That's awesome, and that's what Duran Duran were. The Wedding album came out while we were in college, and it was kind of like a big comeback for them, right?
Right.
And it was like, they had Ordinary World and Come Undone on there. It's like, oh, hey, Duran Duran's back. Hey, good for them. We didn't buy the album because we were going down that hard rock and roll path.
Correct.
But we would still listen to Decade after the beers were flowing for a while because that's just a great, it's a great record. And plus, it had View to a Kill, which was only on the James Bond soundtrack, and, it had Wild Boys, which was only on Arena and stuff like that. So it was, it's still a great, their run in the 80s is, you really can't deny the impact that Duran Duran had on the 80s.
Well, that was the thing when we did that show about them. I was a fan. I remember it, but then doing research, they were the closest thing that we in our generation had to the Beatles. Like, I didn't realize that there was a scene where they were in a limo and there were people like jumping up and down in the limo, and they flashed to the inside and they were like, what's going to happen if they get into this car? Like, their popularity was insane. All of them had an image. Mm-hmm. So you could kind of pick your favorite in the band, other than some other bands at the time where there was just kind of one. Right. I mean, no offense to the Police, but it was pretty much just Sting, right? And the two other guys. If you were just a casual fan, there were pictures I remember people have, like, it was pretty much like older. Like, if I had a friend and he had an older sister and she had posters up on the wall, but they would always have a favorite in the band. Oh, my favorite's John, or my favorite's Simon, or whatever. Oh, okay, so they really had a marketing blitz. And they had the songs to back it up. I mean, like you said, we'd sit there in college and it was like, you're getting into the AC/DC and you're listening to a little something else.
Guns
and now a couple of beers. Yeah. Now it's like, let's throw on a little Duran Duran.
Duran Duran on it. Let's see if we can get the girls to come down the hall. Yeah. Absolutely true. Yeah. No. And I was just telling that to my wife, and like and the Wolf Cub before we went to the show. I'm like, you can't understand the impact and the influence that Duran Duran had on pop culture and pop music in 82, 83, 84. It couldn't have been any bigger. And I was also thinking, I'm really glad that the wife didn't come, so she never really got a good look at John Taylor. So she wouldn't be talking the whole night of like, that bass player was cute. I don't want to hear that for 3-4 days,
What was his name again?
But no, you're right. And the thing is, they had the boy band good looks, but they weren't a boy band. They weren't some contrived architecture of, okay, we'll get one that looks like this. We'll get one that looks like this. We'll dress them like this. This one's hair will look like this. That's something that they all did themselves. They found each other. They made their own original music. And then they rode this amazing wave called MTV right to the bank, man. And it couldn't have been bigger. I mean, the videos they did for Rio, unbelievable, especially at the time, just unbelievable. Going to, where did they go, man? Belize or something crazy like that, Bermuda. They also went to Sri Lanka. I mean,
I think they were in Sri Lanka, and that was a lot due to your friend and mine, Mr. Russell Mulcahy,
right?
Who, I think they were on a break. They were going from point A to point B. They were in Sri Lanka, and he said, "Hey, this is really interesting looking terrain. Let's shoot some videos here." And I think that turned into Hungry Like the Wolf,
right?
Save a Prayer were all filmed on that break. And those are the ones that really pushed them over the top and made them this international phenomenon, because they were selling this very sexy lifestyle. Look at us. We go to these exotic places. There's always these exotic women and, popping in and out of the videos. They were wearing super high end fashionable clothing.
Right.
It looks a little silly now, but back then, trust me, it was very high fashion. So it was like, wow, these guys are really, they're out there doing it. They're jet setting. They're embodying the 80s, what everybody wanted to be in the 80s.
Yeah, well, we'll get into the fashion as we get into the show here.
Okay.
That's for sure. But no, you're right. And it wasn't like they were unobtainable, right? Like you see David Lee Roth with the, yellow mane and the ripped abs, and I'm like, and hairy chest. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to be that guy. Like doing high kicks and stuff. I can't do that. But you see these guys, there's some skinny white guys with cool hair and fashionable clothes. I'm like, I am a haircut and a shopping trip away from being one of these Duran Duran guys. I'm a skinny white guy. I can do this. This is not impossible. This is attainable. So dude, the image was just huge for guys and girls. I mean, I remember I did have a Duran Duran poster at some point, and I had a buddy come over, and he was like smacking their face. Oh, this guy sucks, man. Oh, this guy sucks, man. I'm like, what's the matter with you? He's like, there are chicks like them. I'm like, yeah, but they make great music. They're the best band of our generation, right? I mean, this is why you watch MTV. It's not to watch Billy Joel. I mean, great as he is, you don't want to watch his videos. You want to watch the Duran Duran videos, dude.
And it always seemed like they were trying to top themselves to push it farther. And then the big, I don't even want to say it was controversy, but the big deal when that Arena record came out was the single Wild Boys, which It looks like they started with. And I don't remember what the fee was or what the total, but apparently it was the most expensive video ever shot at that point in time. And it was $1 zillion, a big production piece. Yeah. And I think they had been away for a little while. And so this came out and this kind of re-energized them again. And it was big. It was on every, I don't know, third video or something once they dropped it.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I mean, I think like Rio was the huge success, both from the songs and the videos. Yeah. And then Seven and the Ragged Tiger, it was successful, but I don't think it was quite what Rio was. And I think maybe they were a little worn out at that point. You can kind of see in like the New Moon on Monday video, they look like they're just kind of going through the motions a little bit at that point, and look, their schedule's crazy. Like, they're in Australia to Sri Lanka to the Caribbean, back to Europe, back to a tour of America. I mean, it sounds exciting, yeah, but it can really drain you. So no, but you're right. The Wild Boys video with Laban on the windmill going in the water. I think that was Mulcahy or Mulcahy, I think they call him over here. Again, doing that one. And yeah, I thought that was an interesting way to start the set, to be honest with you. I mean, you got to start with something. You're going to start with something classic from the 80s. Okay. And, it's got Roger on his drum kit, by the way, is still very electronic. Like, it's not like it's not like he went over to like a traditional drum and they mic'd it so it sounded electronic. No, it's still very electronic, so it makes those sounds that you're used to in Duran Duran songs. But that Wild Boys. And, Nick is singing back up a little bit. John generally doesn't stand in a microphone, but Simon comes over and shares the mic. They just kind of point up and get their mugs next to each other so John can sing some backup. Okay. It's kind of the way it works. But yeah, they come out with Wild Boys and the crowd started bumping. It's not like they don't know these songs. They know all of these songs, To come out with a classic like Wild Boys, it really started the night going. All those middle-aged women are starting to loosen up. The hips start moving around a little bit. They start moving. Wolf Cub kind of knew that one. She started hopping a little bit. Well, she still had an ice cream for the first two songs, I got her an ice cream right before the show started. He's like, all right, I want you to cool off and be ready for the show. So Wild Boys comes on. She's still there, just licking the ice cream. All right. But no, I liked it. But I did think it was kind of an odd choice to start with because it is a little stark. It's not super. I shouldn't say it's not rhythmic because obviously those drums make it rhythmic. But I don't know. There's something about an odd beat to it. I just thought it was an interesting choice.
Now, did they do the thing where? Because I've seen them open before with this song, where they play the intro a couple of times. That drum intro, they kind of have the bass drum bump, and then okay, everybody get up, ooh, and then they play the bump, 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 and then they'll go back to the bass drum and then play it again. I don't know. I think they kind of use that to get the crowd moving.
You're right.
It, kind of ease you into it. Whereas, I mean, what else would you want to start with? Like Hungry Like the Wolf, that kind of goes quick. So it's like, wait, what are we doing here? You kind of want to warm them up a little bit first before we go on the ride.
I was kind of thinking like something like Girls on Film or something like that. You could start off, you hear the photos clicking, ching, ching, ching. Like, that would be a cool way to start it off. Yeah. But they did get to that, and we'll do that. Now, the fact of the matter is, I don't think Simon's voice was warmed up all the way till about the third song. It's not like he sounded bad or anything like that, but it sounded like in some parts, he was kind of cut short a little bit, or he wasn't really all the way there yet. I felt like he had to belt out a few, and maybe clear some cobwebs or something like that before he got to like the fourth song, and I was like, okay, he sounds great now. He's good to go now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But dude, so I saw a documentary, I think it was on the BBC about them, and it was Nick Rhodes talking about, we were all so colorful and everything in the 80s. And then in the last few decades, we all got to be like afraid of color. And like so many rock bands of their age, they basically wore black on stage,
Okay.
because it thins them and it shows how cool they are. But I'm like, I don't care. I mean, that's never who Duran Duran were. They should be brightly colored. So they come out, and I'm 150 yards if I'm 1 inch away from the stage. I might be 200 yards. I'm not sure. But without the use of the screen, I can see Nick Rhodes because he has a day glow yellow suit, like the kind like when you will highlight stuff in your textbook. Like it's that yellow with a pink shirt underneath it. Like you could see him from space. You could not miss him, And LeBon had on like these day-glow aquamarine pants with like I think it was a green jacket and then a black shirt with some aquamarine on it to kind of make his pants pop, I guess, And then Taylor had a lot on. He had a red jacket and he also had a black hoodie. And I'm like, dude, it's 80 degrees. You couldn't be cold.
And you got the lights and you've got you're running around on stage. Yeah.
And the sun was on him. I mean, the sun had not set yet, because I'll tell you, after the sun set, all of a sudden a breeze came in and everything cooled off by a good 5 degrees. Like, okay, now this is nice, Like my daughter's rolling her sleeves back down. It's like, okay, yeah, this is cooling off. But I don't think he ever took that stuff off. Roger was in a little bit of black, but he had some color on his shirt. He's just back there working, He's just back there doing his thing, not drawing attention to himself, just back there doing his thing. Plus, they had a saxophonist and 2 Foxy backup singers, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. But, all right, so they go into the next song. Number 2 was Invisible, which is their latest single off their new album, which is, what is it, their 17th? Is their 18th? I don't know. I don't even know how many records they've made, man.
Something like that. And then that goes back to what we've talked about before with it. It's great to see a band like this not just doing a greatest hits tour. They're still putting music out. They still want to be creative and put new stuff on the market. Absolutely.
And we were talking about that both at your show and for the, so the shows I've been going to, it just, you're a real band if you just keep going. You don't quit, and they've been doing this for a long time. And Invisible, A, it fit in well with the set, but B, it sounded really good. And you could tell the band was psyched to it. Simon's voice hopped up for it. And people were psyched because, they're excited to have a new Duran Duran album out after, so long and excited to see these new songs. So it went down very well. And it didn't Future Past is the name of the record. It didn't slow down the vibe or anything. Everybody was pretty psyched for it.
Excellent. And we were talking about that on the Def Leppard show. It's cool when the new stuff fits in. Like you don't think, well, what is this? This doesn't sound like anything else. I don't like this. If it just rolls all together, that's great. And that's the mark of a song that, even though it's new now, it'll probably be around for a while. And I know that they were really excited about it. Do you know, I'm just trying to look here. Do you know off the top of your head, is that a Nile Rodgers?
Oh yeah. Nile Rodgers is absolutely. Yeah. He's their producer.
I think it is. Yeah.
Fairly certain he played guitar because, they officially don't have a guitar player in the band. They do have a guy who plays with him. His name's Dominic or Dom Brown, and he's very good. And he had his own, I think he had a pink suit on himself. Everybody's got to stand out and be bright colors there. But yeah, I mean, in the studio, I'm pretty sure Nile Rodgers is the guitar player, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, I think he's pretty much the go-to. Like they just realize everything Duran Duran sounds better with Nile at the helm these days.
Absolutely.
Hey, this is Tom and Zeus from Shout It Out Loudcast, and you are listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
But all right, so then they're about to go into their third song, and you hear the James Bond music. And then on the big screens, you see, Roger Moore walking out, turn around, firing into the eye. I'm like, they're going to do Veto Kill. And then Simon Bond, just a little preview of what's to come. And I'm like, wait, did Nick Rhodes fire that off at the wrong moment? Was that supposed to happen right there? Did Nick kind of screw that up, I don't know, because then they go into All of You, which is a new song, and I didn't really know it, and it was fine. And I was talking to my daughter, I don't even really know this one. She's like, yeah, it's okay, whatever. And then right afterwards, and there it goes again. I'm like, okay, now it's View to a Kill.
I think you're right. I think that might have been the wrong keystroke on the Mac because, why would you do that? Just a little Yeah, no, he screwed that up.
Yeah, you gonna play the opening chords of Hungry Like the Wolf and then play that a half an hour later? I don't think so. But it was awesome.
Yeah, I forgot how big that single was when it came out. That was like the only, or maybe it was the first number one since like Goldfinger for a James Bond franchise. That was a huge record. And it was the last one they all did together, I think, up until, what was that, like 2004? They did that Astronaut.
Right. Record. They all got back together.
This was the last hurrah for the original cast.
That's interesting. I had forgotten that. Yeah. But I remember View to a Kill was Roger Moore's last James Bond picture, but it was the first one I ever saw in the theater.
Me too. Yeah.
Because for Your Eyes Only, I was just too young. They did Never Say Never, I think maybe in between there, but because it was kind of done without the Broccoli's, it was done kind of somebody won a lawsuit and they got Sean Connery into it or whatever. But View to a Kill was the first one I was like excited to go. Like I could go with my dad, who's this big James Bond fan, and I was psyched to hear View to a Kill. Which, I mean, I love Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney, but in my personal opinion, View to a Kill is the best James Bond theme song they've ever done.
I would agree. And I was in the same boat. Like I had seen James Bond movies, on TV or, on VHS or whatever. But yeah, that was the first one that I got to see in the theater and I was psyched. And it was, I could definitely look past the fact that Roger Moore was probably 60 something.
But he still looked good,
Oh, yeah.
And I think my mom was going to let Dad take me to go see Octopussy, so it was just because of the name, right? So I mean, View to a Kill was my first one. But see, and this could be a whole nother show too. But to me, Roger Moore is a fantastic James Bond. I know everybody says Sean Connery's the best, and if you want to say who's the best actor, I say, okay, you're right. Sean Connery has done more and had greater range, and I love his non-James Bond movies. But I really only saw Roger Moore as James Bond, and he was in all the ones that I watched growing up, and he was very much a gentleman. He always looked good. Yes, he was older, because he and Sean are about the same age, I think. So, he comes after him. Yeah, he's going to be a little bit older in some of those pictures. He's not, doing all his own stunts or anything like that. But I just thought he was super suave. Tanya Roberts was super foxy, and Chris Walken's one of the best bad guys, not just for James Bond, but just like in movie history, So I just remember View to a Kill being so big part of my life. And a lot of it's because Duran Duran was in it.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I don't know. I think I would have been excited for James Bond, period. At that point in time, to get to see one that was new. But yes, having Duran Duran in there really pushed it over the edge. And I know the video played into the beginning scene of the movie. They intercut. They were in the Eiffel Tower, I believe, in the movie. And then they cut to the band in the Eiffel Tower, and they weren't there at the same time, but they kind of made it seem like it was part of the movie. And I thought that was interesting. And it tied the two together.
Yeah. And it was, and everybody went off. Everybody's like, woo. Yeah. They were dancing. They were loving View to a Kill. They were psyched about it. All right. So now next, what was cool was, me, I don't go to a lot of opening acts anymore unless I really like them already or I'm dying to see them. And on a day when I was like just getting the girls back from the States and it was hot, I'm like, I'm not going to an opening act. We're going to get in there kind of as late as we can and we'll stay for the show as long as my daughter can take it. But if there was any opening act I really wanted to see, it was this night because Nile Rodgers and Chic opened for Duran Duran.
Okay.
And apparently he's opening for them. They're doing some dates like August, September in the States, like 14, 15 dates. And Nile and Chic are opening for them as well, and that makes sense. They kind of go together pretty well. So when they do Notorious, Nile comes out on stage and he plays Notorious with him. And he looked super cool, dude. He is so awesome. He's in great shape. He's got the long braids down his back. He's got the hat on. He was dressed in all white, and he had his guitar and doing that that Nile Rodgers kind of shake thing, that is the kind of chug that he's got there. Of course, he produced Notorious back in the day, did he not?
I believe he did. Yeah, I think the story, as I remember it, is that they had finished Seven and the Ragged Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
They had finished. The Reflex was going to be the first single, and they were like, I don't know about this. There's something missing. They somehow were at an event or a function or something with Nile Rodgers, and they said, hey, can you just take a look at this? Can you just listen to this and say? And he went in there and did some tweaks to it. And then they said, this is it. And this is our guy. And I think from then on, it was pretty much like anything they do, he's involved. I don't know. I can't tell in front of me right now if he's produced everything, but I'm 99% sure he's at least had his hand in everything Duran Duran since that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's acted as their guitar player. I mean, except for maybe Astronaut, because Andy Taylor was back for that.
Yeah.
But it still wouldn't shock me if he laid down a few tracks here or there, or gave him, somewhere to go.
I was thinking the same thing too. I mean, I don't know at that point in time how focused Andy was.
Right.
Anyway, it was cool, and like you said, he looks like a rock star.
Yeah.
Like even if you didn't know who he was, he's like, who is that dude? Yeah, you're right. He's always dressed well. He's got the long rock star hair, and he's got that smile on his face all the time. That you're just like, man, this guy just looks like he's having the time of his friggin' life all the time.
Cooler than a fan, man, all the time.
Yeah.
And it was between Notorious and Pressure Off that he said, you know what, I think tonight we go ahead and make it official. Nile Rodgers is an official member of Duran Duran. I'm like, yeah, I mean, you should. You owe a lot to him,
Yeah.
You owe, I mean, you guys are rich and successful, but I bet he's as wealthy as all of you put together, man, to be honest with you.
What I didn't realize either, there was a lot of stuff that both he and Bernard from Chic did, not really behind the scenes, but kind of behind the scenes. Like a lot of those big Robert Palmer hits from the late 70s, early 80s, they wrote, produced. And I remember thinking, like, that's not a Robert Palmer song. That's a Chic song. I mean, all he did was show up and sing. They did all the heavy lifting. So, yeah, to your point, yeah, I think he's got a lot. Like, if you went and looked at the producer credits.
Oh, my God.
And you did that, too? And you did that? Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, cool.
He told a great story on the Rock on Tours about how he wrote and produced I'm Coming Out for Diana Ross, which was a huge hit for her. But she was nervous about it because, I'm Coming Out certainly has these gay theme, undertones for it. And there's already a lot of female impersonators going around as Diana Ross. And in the 70s, it was still pretty taboo to the general public. And she's like, I got to be aware of my image and I don't want it to be about that. He's like, no, that's not what it's about. Every night Bernard will come to me and be like, all right, man, what are we coming out to tonight? Like, because we need something to start the show off, right? To kick it off, to get things going. So this could be your song to walk out on stage. I'm coming. And that's, and that's how he sold it to her.
Well, and then, okay. And so then you say, well, then what do we need to do to kind of make this different? What's the well, we can have some funky drums on there. Well, I know a guy that can play the funky drums for you, Mr. Tony Thompson. And so, again, is that a Diana Ross song? Or is that a Chic song because they wrote it, produced it, played on it?
Right.
And when you listen to that drum, like, that's phenomenal.
No, I know it is. Yeah, it's all good. And the fact that they didn't let Chic into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but they just made a special exception. Like, well, look, Nile Rodgers has to be it. Like, Chic was up and they got nominated and they came down a finalist. And everyone's like, nope, they're not rock and roll. Nope, they didn't have enough hits on their own. Nope, blah, blah, blah. And then finally somebody said, okay, you can't keep Nile Rodgers out. So special contributor Nile Rodgers.
Yeah.
But obviously Tony and Bernard had a lot to do with his success as well.
Right.
So the second song he did with them is called Pressure Off, which I really didn't know. It's from one of their later day albums, Paper Gods, another one that he did with them. So I didn't really know that one. And then they kissed and hugged and they sent him off the stage. And then they went into Union of the Snake, which was, I always loved that song back in the day off Seven and the Ragged Tiger. It was one I loved when I was a kid.
And it's got a really cool intro that bump, and then it goes into the bass groove, and that one had a really cool kind of like post-apocalyptic what's going on video where they're wandering around. I think it was Simon and John that are walking around in the desert, and there's like some kind of like creature things falling. So again, it was like you could watch it on MTV and say, wow, this is a really I like the song, but I really like the video too.
Mhm.
And, again, like what, I don't even know what he's talking about. And I think that we talked about this on the Duran Duran show. There's a lot of lyrics that are almost nonsensical. So it's like so they age really well.
Right.
I'm like, wait, like I don't even know what's happening here, but I like the groove. I like the beats on this thing. I like the vocals. I don't really know what he's saying, and they've got a really cool video. So yeah, I can listen to it over and over and over again.
And I've said this before, John Taylor is awfully funky for a white boy on that bass, man. I mean, sometimes he's plucking it, sometimes he's thumping it, sometimes he's up and down and grooving on it, but like he's on it, man. I don't know how he learned to be like that, but he's on it.
He is definitely underrated. I think the problem for these guys were that they were too good looking.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of took center stage, but they really are great musicians. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. If you like John Taylor, go to YouTube and watch those Stone Groove Bass Odyssey videos that he did during quarantine.
Yep.
They're phenomenal. And a lot of these songs, or actually probably most of these songs, it's the bass that's really carrying this, and it's really funky. And Andy Taylor was kind of a guy who would just kind of pepper the song. Like the guitar wasn't driving it. He just kind of put it in where it needed to be.
And that's the difference between Duran Duran and basically every band that we've loved or gravitated to or become beholden by. Most all our bands are guitar driven, often
Right.
two guitars. Yeah, you want to put keyboards in there, that's great. But even prog bands like Genesis and Yes that have these maestros on the keyboards, they still have these masterful guitar players, right?
Right.
And that's kind of what it's all about. Whereas he's just putting in a little flavor, a little color here, that fits in with the groove of what Roger and John are laying down, really. And it's Nick Rhodes is driving the uniqueness of the song, I guess, is his tone and what he's doing. At least that's the way I always thought of him.
Yeah, and they all kind of fit together well. It didn't seem like there was ever a Duran Duran signature, like it had to be one way or the other. Sometimes it was the keyboard, sometimes it was the bass. They just kind of put it all together to make a song that fit in with everything else that they were doing.
Yeah, and they've done it for decades now, so something's working,
Yeah.
All right, after Union of the Snake, they do Come Undone, which kind of brings it down a little bit, right? Who do you need? Who do you love? It was big 30 years ago, but I mean, people dug it, that's for sure. Then they went to a song called Give It All Up, which I did not know. It's from the new album, the Future Past album. So yeah, okay, do it. Have fun. The girls are starting to get into this. I was really psyched. They have this beautiful, foxy woman named Anna Ross, who's been with them for years now as a backup singer. She does some of her own stuff as well. But I mean, being a Duran Duran's backup singer has got to pay the bills pretty well. Just a foxy, hot black woman. And I was like really psyched to see her. And they usually had another black girl with her, but they've got this girl, Rachael O'Connor, who's younger. I mean, she's got to be early to mid-20s maybe. White girl. I guess she was on like The Voice or something like that over here as a teenager or something like that. And that's kind of how she started her career. Again, she has some singles and records of her own, but you get a gig like playing with Duran Duran, that's huge. And she was a little bit more 2.0. Like, yeah, she can get out there and dance. She's a little athletic. She could strut out there. And they kind of gave, because to me, Anna is the one. And then whoever's with her, she can do the backup. But they really kind of gave Rachael a chance to shine and get out there and strut a little bit and sing with Simon, maybe even a little more than Anna did. That was a little surprising to me.
Interesting. I wonder how she feels about that. Maybe they're switching things up, or maybe they're looking for a new direction to take.
I don't know. I wouldn't go in a direction away from Anna. I think she's amazing, but that's just me. And it's not like Rachael wasn't good. She was great, and and she had on a sparkly, glitter top to kind of add in, because Anna generally dresses like all in black, and she looks hot doing it. But Rachael was trying to jazz it up a little bit. Anyway, it was around the time of Give It All Up that I started to get hungry, because I made sure I fed the Wolf Cub before we went, but I didn't really feed myself. So now it's getting to be 9 o'clock. I'm like, all right, I got to go eat. So we go get in line to get a burger, which was fairly short, but they cook them to order. So it was taking a while. And I'm like, if there's one song I got to see, it's Hungry Like the Wolf, right? Because I'm the wolf. And as far as I know, that was the first, it was the first video off Rio that I remember seeing.
See, I'm confused now. Would you say that at that point in time, you were in fact hungry like the wolf?
Yes, exactly. And I missed watching hungry like the wolf because I was in line because I was hungry. I mean, I can still see one of the screens pretty well, but I was joking to my daughter and the woman in line. Like, it's ironic that I'm missing Hungry Like the Wolf because I got hungry and had to go get a burger. But then they had these picnic tables, so we actually sat down and watched them do Friends of Mine. Again, not a song that I was familiar with, even though I guess it's off the first record. I don't really remember it. I mean, I remember having the cassette and listening to it a little bit back and forth, but I don't remember that song very well. And then they went into Ordinary World, which obviously I know, and that was a big one from when we were in college. But it was at that point that Simon took a break, to talk about the people in the Ukraine and how, how lucky we are and how it's not that far away. And so when they go up on the screen, instead of having them in color or having them black and white or sepia, they kind of had the blue and yellow flag waving over them as they did Ordinary World, and so that was a nice tribute. Plus the girls had their cell phones out. Used to be their lighters, with their cell phones out, to kind of hold up in the air there, and everybody was excited about it. So I'm like, all right, they're doing fine. Now I'm sure if we were down in front, people would have been dancing and going nuts, but we're way in the back, just kind of chilling out, just trying to keep her safe. It's a chill night. I don't need to be all the way down there. So when they get to something like Tonight United, that's actually a new song, but it's kind of upbeat. It's more of a dance track, and the girls were out like strutting their stuff during that. And I'm like, that's cool. I bet we're getting close to the end for my daughter here, she's got to be getting tired. I'm like, and they played a lot more new songs than I thought they would. I mean, they could play stuff from their catalog that I don't know that's 20, 25 years, 15 years old, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I figured there's going to be songs that I'm not that familiar with. I didn't know they were going to do so many new ones off the new album. But when they got into Planet Earth, I'm like, yes, Planet Earth, man. Now this is the stuff right here. This would have been a great song to open with, Planet Earth.
Yeah, because it has that intro that you can play and get everybody psyched up. And I remember this one. This was off. Technically, it was off the first record, but I think they re-released. Oh wait, no, that was. Please tell me now.
Yeah, right.
Or is there something I should know?
Something I should know.
That was the one that was re-released. This one, I remember listening to the Rio stuff and then hearing this and thinking, wow, wait, I missed this one. This was really good. Yeah, it's a great song. I mean, when you think of like 80s new wave, somebody had never heard it. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, 80s new wave. You put on Planner, that is the sound of 80s new wave.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I remember that very well. No, yeah, I think it was after Rio they released Is There Something I Should Know? Partly black and white, partly with the red ball bouncing around.
Yeah.
But you're right in that I think it was a single over here as it was in the States, but they put it on. They put it on the first cassette,
right.
And they ditched.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the show. I can't remember what they took off, but that's what they did. Yeah, and they did the band intros, and that was interesting just to kind of see what the pecking order really is, because they introduced the sax player, they introduced the girls, they introduced Don Brown on the guitar. And then, of course, it's Roger Taylor, who did leave the band for a while, and he is the drummer, right? Then it's Nick Rhodes, and John Taylor second to last. So, I mean, that just shows you who really is up there, and I think he is in control. I mean, Simon is too. I always figured it was Nick to some degree, and I know that it is, but I think John Taylor is the one who's one of the people really kind of pushing the band all these years.
I think so, yeah. And I think that was one of the big problems when Andy Taylor came back is I think he forgot what a taskmaster John is. And so, hey, it's all good. I kind of just got, no, dude, I need you to be 100%. I need you to play this for me right now to make sure that you can go out and do this every night. And I think he is even though it's a kind of a weird dynamic too, because he's the bass player and most times it's the singer and the guitarist who run the band. Yeah, I think you're right. He's definitely the majority or the kind of the captain of the ship.
Kind of, yeah. And when something's not right, I think he's pretty vocal about it because I saw in a documentary, like he wasn't going off, but he's like, no, this was wrong. You did it wrong. It messed up the thing. And then he noticed the camera was on him. He's like, yeah, I don't want you looking at me while I'm doing this,
right,
kind of thing.
Right. And I think it was, and I'm remembering that now too. And I think it was with Simon, and he was like, yeah, you need to like sing that again or something. And he's like, you know what? I'm tired of this, and I'm tired of your attitude. And yeah, it was one of those like, look at the camera, like, oh, you just saw mommy and daddy fighting.
Right.
Yeah. Moving on now. But to keep something like this going for so long at such a high level, you have to have somebody like that. You have to have somebody that's going to tell you, no, this is crap. We need to be at this level.
Right.
You need to be at a 10. You're at like a 7 right now. If you think that's okay, you're wrong.
That won't cut it.
Right. Yeah. In front of, how many people do you think were at this concert?
80,000.
Yeah. That's not going to fly in front of 80,000 people. It has to be perfect every time.
Yeah. Yeah. And he did introduce himself. And I'm Simon Le Bon. It's French.
Now that's interesting because usually they have somebody do all that, and then like we talked about, Ronnie will introduce Mick Jagger.
Mm-hmm.
They usually have somebody else. I'm surprised that John didn't introduce Simon, but okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Simon won't give him the microphone and he doesn't have one of his own, he has to do it himself, I suppose.
They're fighting for it. No, it's my microphone.
All right, so Planet Earth was great visuals and stuff like that on the big screens. And then they do Hold Back the Rain from Rio. A little bit of a deep track. That was never a single or close to it. That was not, I mean, I knew the song because I listened to the tape so many times, but I was a little surprised they played that one.
Yeah, I don't, as far as that goes, I don't know what to tell you on that because there was a song off of Rio, The Chauffeur, that was, I had never heard before, but apparently it was huge in Europe and they had a video for it and everything. So I really don't know what they did outside the United States as far as releasing tracks off that record.
Well, I don't know if it was a single or if they're just saying, hey, we always do 3 or 4 songs off of Rio. So then there's 3 we have to do, right? You have to do Rio. You have to do Hungry Like the Wolf. And you ought to do Save a Prayer because it's an amazing song.
Right.
So if you're going to do 4, okay, well then you've got another 6 or 7 to choose from outside of those 3. And maybe they rotate them in and out, on different tours. I'm not sure. But I was surprised. And I was a little surprised at the stage of the show in which they played it. I would have thought that would have been maybe an early one that they mixed in with some of the new ones. But I mean, it's a classic, yes, but it's not a huge hit.
Yeah, that is an interesting choice. Because I wonder too how many. I mean, if it's new, I can see people saying, "Oh yeah, I just heard this. It came up on my Apple Music or whatever as a new track." But yeah, something from 1982, 81, 82, whenever that came out, would that really come up? Probably not. So, yeah, how many people had not heard that song before? I don't know.
But it went down well, and then they went in da 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 da, reflect da 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 da, and the place went off. And look, I'm like, I know this is getting to be the end of the road for me, right? So I'm like, all right, honey, I hope you're having fun. Because I played the Reflex for her a few times, and she started dancing all over the place. She's hopping around and spinning around. I'm like, wow, look at you go! All right, how about this? I thought I'd be carrying you out of here at this point, and here she is hopping around to the Reflex, which, I mean, I remember when that came out because there were a couple different versions. There was a single edit version and there was a remix version. And there was the album version. And so it was, and back then I couldn't get every single version,
right.
Like maybe I could now. But I just remember I loved that song. The girls were strutting out to it and I'm like, this is fun. This is what Duran Duran's about. Again, the lights were all over the place. It was a big production, and the crowd went off. And I'm like, all right, this is a great way to kind of end it. At least end it for me, because I'm like, all right, I gotta get back home, right? But she was having a blast at that point. I'm like, because it was about 4 songs earlier or 3 songs earlier, maybe before they did Planet Earth or something like that. I said, listen, they'll do the Reflex. And then we can go. And she goes, okay, Daddy. Because he's like, all right, I can survive 2 or 3 more songs or whatever.
Right.
They play the Reflex. She loves it. She starts hopping around. I'm like, you ready to go? She kind of gies me that look. I'm like, okay, you want to stay for one more song? She's like, yeah, one more song. I'm like, all right. And the next song is White Lines, Don't Do It, which is not a song that I was familiar with. It's a Grandmaster Melly Mel song that I guess they have done. And, a lot of people in the crowd seem to know it pretty well. So I guess that was some kind of hit over here that we weren't privy to in the U.S.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they seemed to know the lyrics and they were hopping around. And, the Wolf Cub didn't like that one as much, but I think she was still happy to be there, happy to be at a show kind of thing. But when we were talking about White Lines, I'm like, yeah, I know what White Lines are. And I hope she can't really pick up the lyrics on this one.
But now they're saying, don't do it. So you're saying what?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, yes, exactly. Just ignore that song altogether.
Strike that from the record.
And then to round out the set, then they go into Girls on Film with the camera clicking and stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a classic one. And remember they had 2 versions of the video back in the day?
What? What are you saying? I would never stay up till midnight to try and see the European version of this. What?
On Showtime or whatever. Yeah, exactly. They had one they could play on MTV, and then they had one that you had to have pay cable like Showtime or something like that.
Right.
To see it. It wasn't just a little bit of nudity, but it was like very sexualized, and some of it was S&M and bondage, and some of it was homoerotic, and it's like, wow, this is really
there's a lot to unpack there. But yeah, to see that that was like the holy grail of like, you saw what? Yeah, it was like 12:39. Yeah, on Showtime, and you had to angle the TV maybe so that nobody knew what you were doing. Because that was, you're right. It wasn't just nudity. There was a lot of very overtly sexual things in it, and I think they were just trying to tell you like this was the lifestyle for these, the fashion industry.
Yeah, and they're pushing the limit of what they could do and that kind of thing. So I get it, and so I knew, but I also knew that was the last song they did before they break for the encore. So I'm like, all right, we got to start walking. I mean, we can still hear it. So, and you can turn around and look at the screens as we go. It's like, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
As they did Girls on Film. And then it morphed into something, it was acceptable in the 80s song, which, obviously they got away with things in the 80s that you can't do today.
Correct.
That's a great song for them to play, but so we just start walking out of there, getting out of there. I actually hated to go because A, she was feeling good, and B, the last 2 songs they play are 2 of my very, very, very favorite Duran Duran songs. Now, I could still hear them because it takes a while to walk out of the park, and they have all the gates blocked off, so you have to kind of filter through one of 2 areas. Okay. You can't just walk out like the Speaker's Corner or walk out to the Marble Arch. You have to kind of walk around for a while. So they get into Save a Prayer. And I can hear it, but it's not like sitting there watching them, with your lighter up in the air or whatever.
Right.
That kind of thing. Like, this is a beautiful song. I love this one. She's like, well, why are we leaving? I'm like, because about 10 minutes, 80,000 people are going to be leaving. And we're trying to catch a bus, we don't need 80,000 people trying to get on the bus at the same time. So it's like, we got to get out of here. And then it was over kind of as if we got across the street, and then I could hear Rio going on as we were on Edgware Road, like walking to catch the bus. And, but so we did hear them all. We maybe didn't see them all, but we heard them all, jumped on the bus, got within 2 blocks and got home. And of course, then she was up because you know how it is when you come home, even if you're tired after a show, you're still wired, right? Yeah. Your brain's still running. You might have a little buzz in your ears. And it's like, even if like you take a shower and you lay in bed, you're not going to just fall right asleep, even if you are 8. So she was up for a while. And then, you know what? I just let her sleep in the next day. She was supposed to go to soccer camp. I'm like, she can miss the first day of soccer camp. She's not the next Alex Morgan. I just need her out of the house during the day, and I can get something else for her to do, So I just let her sleep in, and she was bragging about it too. She's like, how many other 8-year-olds took a transatlantic flight, then took a 4-hour nap, then went to a Duran Duran show? I think I'm the only one. I'm like,
it was a busy day for her. Yes.
Yes. So I was happy for her, and I was happy to see Duran Duran. It wasn't ideal to see them in such a massive place. It would be better to see them in an arena or something like that. They're doing, of their 14 dates, I think 3 of them are in the Hollywood Bowl, and maybe 2 of them are in Vegas. And seeing them there at one of those places would probably be the way to do it. Or in an arena. But, it was still, I always wanted to see Duran Duran ever since we were little kids. When that Astronaut came out and the whole band was back together, a friend of mine and I, we'll call her J-Lo, we're trying to engineer a way to go see them because it's like, I don't know if they'll ever be back, all of them together again. And all 5 of them, that didn't last that long, obviously. Right. But the 4 of them are still doing it really, really well. And it was fun, So it's a big box check. It's kind of a lifetime achievement thing. I got to take my daughter. And so now she's been to 2 Kiss shows, The Who at Wembley, and the Stones and Duran Duran at Hyde Park. So she's ahead of the curve.
All by 8 years old. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, you were talking about, being amped up after the show. I remember that because when we went to see Def Leppard, it was a long day with several rain delays. But I remember, I'm like, oh man, it's going to be late when we get out of here. But I remember walking out, just being pumped up, like, man, I can't believe we just bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you kind of wanted to go back and listen to like what was that? What was the station in Orlando that used to do the replays? That was fantastic.
Yeah. It was 100 something. I can't remember the exact
So you would get in the car and they were playing it wasn't the live tracks, but they were playing the same tracks in the same order. So
the studio set list, basically.
Correct. Yeah. I love that. That was awesome because you were reliving it. Yeah. You don't want to go to bed. You're lucky that, you kept her home, but I was lucky that it was not on a school night because that would have been rough the next day.
It was for me. Basically I got her, I slept in too. Like the wife may have had to go to the office, but I'm like, if she's sleeping in, I'm sleeping in, because, I get up the next day, I'm all stiff and sore and stuff like that, and I didn't drink or anything. I mean, that's the thing, but it's so hot. I don't like to drink because I just sweat it out anyway. Plus it's just me taking care of a child. I'm like, you have to have your wits about you, you need to stay focused. So it's like stone cold sober. And I woke up like tired and sore and groggy. And I'm like, I might be getting too old for this. I might just be. But, here's the thing. I'm looking at the dates for like August and September. It's like, unless you're in one of the huge cities, 5 of the 14 dates are in LA and Las Vegas, and then they're like one's in Minneapolis. Of course, there's certainly like in New York, Chicago, those kinds. I don't know if they're doing anything in the South, maybe in Atlanta, maybe in Miami, but I don't know that you'll even get a chance that they'll be coming anywhere near you.
Yeah, probably not. I can't imagine what the draw would be here. Like, they're going to go to big, international cities, like you said, Las Vegas, LA, probably if they were going to come anywhere here, it would be Miami with a big crowd. But let's face it, at this point in time, they can do whatever they want. Wherever they're going to pick the place to play, they're going to sell it out and then they're going to move on. They're not going to play Milwaukee. They're not going to play Jacksonville. They're not going to play Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, we'll have to, if I get the chance, I'll definitely do it, but you're right. Probably not going to be around anywhere that I am.
Well, I guess we can take a quick look here. Welch, Minnesota.
Okay.
Which is probably Twin Cities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chicago, Toronto, Columbia, Maryland, which is basically DC.
Right.
New York, Columbus, Ohio, Fort Worth, Dallas, in other words, Texas, 2 nights in Vegas, San Francisco, Phoenix, 3 nights at the Hollywood Bowl. I guess they could add some dates, but they're not even playing Miami. They're not even playing Atlanta.
Wow. Okay. Well, so much for that idea.
But I suggest you go because it's fun and it was colorful. Again, they set this trend with fashion, not only style but fashion throughout the 80s. Then they kind of got into we're so cool, we're going to wear black all the time. But I'm glad. I can't imagine them wearing that Dayglow stuff anywhere but the stage. But especially when you're in a place where you're 200 yards away, absolutely that's the way they ought to be dressing. They're the old new romantics, right? They should be proud of the color that they wear.
And I'm glad they're doing that too, because I think the black was like a 90s and early 2000s thing. I think they wanted to distance themselves from being a quote unquote 80s band.
Right.
But at this point in time, they've got the track record. They've got enough new albums now to say that they're not a nostalgia act. And if 85,000 people show up to see them at Hyde Park, they're still pretty relevant. So yeah, go ahead and just embrace it. This is who we are. This is what we wear. This is what we look like. Deal with it.
And when he was singing, I know that maybe his voice wasn't quite wound up for the first 2 songs, but when he was doing Girls on Film, he was belting it out. He was holding the notes. Like, he was really good. Like, he was no break in it. He didn't have to change keys or anything. Like, he was doing it extremely well. I was like, wow, he really does still have it. And as long as he has it, the band can go on for a while.
Right. And so then I was going to ask you too. So if that's the case, the end of Ordinary World, he goes up on the record, he goes up pretty high. Mm-hmm. Was that the same thing or did he tune that down?
I'm trying to remember. I don't know if he tried to hold it that hard. I just remember Girls on Film. I was like, the guitar player, Dom, I don't think it was his fault. I think his sound was off. And I don't know if it was his equipment. I don't really necessarily think it was his playing. I think it was the way it was all hooked together. But I'm like, he was off and Simon was on. And then Simon still has it, which bodes well because Save a Prayer, which comes after that, which is really I guess you kind of call it a ballad. It's a soft song. It's kind of a crooner song. he was smooth for that. So it was worth it. It was worth going to see him. But I don't want to go. I don't want to go to any festivals or stadium concerts for a while. I want to go to theaters and maybe a good arena somewhere. But I think that's better for me.
I was thinking the same thing in Jacksonville, just saying it's a great experience and it's great to see this many people show up. But as far as actually seeing the show, it really did. And the thing is, there really isn't that much show either, because they realize that most of the people are only watching the video screen.
Right? Yeah.
So that's where they put a lot of the focus. So if you actually got up or front row, you would say, oh, well, there's nothing really going on here. It's all just blacked out. Everything's painted black. There's a drum riser, and that's about it, because everything's happening on the screens. So yeah, to see them in more of a smaller space where they would do more with the stage, I think would be preferable.
So that's my take on Duran Duran live at Hyde Park. BST Summertime, the last show of the year. And so glad that I went. Gotta tell you guys, as a kid growing up, watching MTV, buying my first cassettes with my own money, it was kind of all about Duran Duran to me. They had a look, they had a great sound. They were all over the place. Like Jackson said during the show, it was really for Americans of our generation, the second coming of the Beatles, or the closest thing that we were ever going to get to it, right? They had a huge hype around them. Their songs were everywhere. They had this new technology called MTV to help promote them. They were full of color. They were different than the old rock and roll. And as much as I love like Sabbath, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Aerosmith, the heavy music of the 70s, come the 80s, it was time for something fresh. It was time for something new. I guess they were called the New Romantics, and we just knew them as kind of new wave or pop music that kind of fit into this bigger landscape of pop music and MTV in the early 80s. But to see them there, basically the original band, Andy Taylor came back in when Roger came back in the 2000s there, but he's gone now. But basically the original band back together, doing the songs that they love, big stage show, lots of lights, lots of color. It was fun. It was a good time. Kind of a lifelong goal finally achieved. And so to my friend J-Lo out there, I hope you get the chance to see them as well, my lady, because it was great. It was fun. And there are a lot of people having a good time. So to anyone out there in America who in August and September are going to be able to see them with Chic and Nile Rodgers opening up for them, I highly recommend it. So thanks, guys. And as usual, hey, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Did we leave out your favorite part? You have got to let us know. Tweet us at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. We've also got an email for you, uglyamericanwerewolf@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show. Let us know what albums or bands or concerts, DVDs, movies, what you would like to hear us talk about. Maybe which guests you like for us to get on the show, because we've had a great run lately of both musicians and other podcasters, and we want to continue that run. And if you're thinking about it, hey, go out to wherever you listen, whether it's iTunes or Apple Music, which are probably most popular for us, Spotify. Good Pods have been very good to us. We ended up in their top 10 again this week, and we appreciate that. Google Play, YouTube, wherever you like to get it, go ahead and give us a positive review, and it just helps us find other rock and roll fans like you, helps us grow the show, helps us get more and better guests on. And if you send us the review or we get wind of it, hey, we might just read it here on the show. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, we need to thank our sponsors, rarevinyl.com. You check it out, old Duran Duran singles or albums, looking for some rare CDs, go to rarevinyl.com. Use the code podcast. You will get 10% off of your order. Thanks to everybody at Pantheon Podcasts, our family of amazing music podcasts at Pantheon Pods, www.pantheonpodcast.com. And make sure you check in next week. Next week is going to be one of the biggest shows we've ever done here on The Wolf. I'm not going to tell you who it is just yet, but I will tell you it's our first interview with a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, somebody who we regard very highly on this show and have done several shows about in the past. That might give you a little bit of a hint. Our prog friends probably know who we are talking about, but super excited. It's going to be a great show, and we can't wait to share it with you. So until next time, all you rock and rollers all around the world, be cool and stay safe.